Welcome to episode 2 of the Manifest Health podcast. I'm so happy to have you here, and I'm so honored that of all of the infinite amount of podcasts there are to listen to, you chose to listen to this one. So thank you for being here. This is the second episode in a series that I'm currently doing on the core principles of healing. So in our first episode, I spoke about the first core principle, which is coming into relationship with God and relying on Him and really developing that trust and reliance on Him. So check that out if you haven't heard it yet. And today I will be talking about the second core principle. But before we dive into that, I actually want to start off with something I noticed come up for me that I would love to jam on here because it's something that I know so many people can relate to. And I want to share it through a lens that I personally have never heard anyone talk about. So what I want to talk about is perfectionism. And more specifically, the root cause wounds that can end up manifesting this behavior, which is in essence a survival response to something, right? The perfectionism itself is actually a survival response. So let's break all of that down. So this all came up for me because now that I have this podcast out in the world, as I was leading up to the launch of the first episode, I noticed all of these voices and old patterns coming up for me around perfectionism, which was honestly so weird because if you've ever been to any of my in-person containers, then you know that one of my things is specifically modeling imperfection. I love being a model for that, truly. I love showing that you don't have to have everything perfect or be some amazing seasoned speaker to start doing something that you love, right? And all of the different in-person containers and ceremonies that I facilitated, I make it known to everyone that I'm going to be reading straight from my notes because when I was writing my class, what I wrote was awesome. And in this current phase of my life, my brain simply does not function in a way that can just remember everything that I want to say. And I can jumble over my words and I can lose my train of thought and I can go off on tangents. And I know that I likely won't be able to teach what I desire to teach effectively or with the proper flow. And that I will definitely accidentally skip over some important points if I don't read straight from my notes. So I make it known for this reason. I'm so happy to model that this is life. I also call myself out when I make a mistake because honestly, who cares? We're human. We're not perfect. And the majority of women in my groups are also tired moms like myself who are overstimulated and sleep deprived and overworked. And I just want to give us all the permission we need to just be who we are in the season that we're at and to drop the worry and anxiety over how we're being received by others. And what I found coming up for me in releasing this podcast was this fear around the ways I would be received. And this is so classic how our subconscious patterns work because consciously, I know what I'm sharing is my art. It's my transmission. It's lessons I've learned from my own lived experience. And it's also just from the love of teaching and sharing and especially supporting people on their healing journeys the same way that I've been inspired by so many people who share and teach. And I know it will land with the people it's meant for. And I know it's not for everyone. And that's totally okay. And I know that it ultimately does not matter how people are receiving me, so much so that this is the lesson I enjoy modeling in my classes and containers. So with this coming up for me, I started to dig and ask myself, where is this coming from? Right? The subconscious is not matching up with the conscious. So through the somatic work that I did around this, I was able to get to the root that it's actually not even at all about how I'm being received. It was actually coming from something much deeper, much older, which is the wounds that I have around connection. Because if I put myself out there in this way, I'm inviting feedback and engagement, which of course is exactly what I want. But I learned as a child that putting myself out there vulnerably, giving myself in that way and inviting connection can also lead to abandonment and betrayal. So my nervous system is subconsciously rejecting the very opportunities for connection that I consciously desire. And isn't it interesting that in my case, that was the root of what displayed as a perfectionism problem, right? So when people talk about perfectionism, we usually talk about it like it's about standards or control or fear of doing it wrong. But sometimes perfectionism isn't actually about the work at all. Sometimes perfectionism is what your nervous system does when it associates being seen with being hurt. So that can look like over-editing and overthinking, or delaying posting, or waiting until it's better, or feeling like you need the perfect moment, the perfect energy, the perfect delivery, or even hiding behind, I'm still refining it, right? When really you're trying to just protect yourself from what might happen once it lands. Because once it lands, you're not alone with it anymore. And once it's out there, it can be met, and it could be loved, and it could be misunderstood, and it could be ignored, and it could be criticized. And for a nervous system that learned that connection leads to pain, that is not neutral. That's charged. So as I started to really sit with this, I realized that perfectionism can be driven by so many different subconscious beliefs. And so I want to break down for you the different subconscious patterns that can hide underneath perfectionism. And then I also want to share exactly what I'm doing to retrain my nervous system to experience being seen and engaged with as safe, and even a step further for myself to teach my nervous system to love being seen and engaged with. Not in a way that floods my system, right? Not in a way that pressures me, in a way that actually builds safety and capacity over time, because that's how the nervous system works. It's through titration, which means small little baby steps. We cannot bulldoze over our capacity because that's just re-traumatizing. Expansion happens little by little. So here are some of the common patterns that can show up as perfectionism. So see what pings for you, okay? So for some of us, there's a rejection wound, right? So the belief underneath can become, if it's perfect, I can't be rejected. Right? So perfection becomes this kind of shield, this protection from shame or from criticism or from not being chosen, right? And for others, there's a core wound of being rejected or punished for having needs. So the belief here can sound like, if I share this, I'll need something from people. And if needing feels dangerous or vulnerable to our nervous system, perfectionism becomes a way to protect ourselves from wanting at all, because wanting sets us up for disappointment. And then for some people, there's an even deeper fear that says, if I'm really seen, I'll be attacked or talked about or exposed, right? This often comes from old social wounds. Maybe it's friendship trauma or group dynamics, or some moments where being visible didn't feel safe. So the body braces even before anything actually happens. And then for those with core wounds like being parentified or being given too much responsibility too early or being in a caretaker role, right? There can also be this belief that says, if people like this, they'll expect more from me. So perfectionism slows us down and it keeps things contained, and it makes sure that we don't accidentally become responsible for other people's expectations. And then for some nervous systems, success itself doesn't feel neutral because there were experiences of sibling rivalry or maybe comparison or jealousy or being shamed or maybe excluded for standing out or for being successful. So there's this belief underneath that says, if I succeed, I'll be resented. So staying small or endlessly refining can feel safer than standing out. And then another really common one is, if I'm fully honest, I'll be misunderstood. because maybe you experienced your words being misinterpreted, or you were invalidated or wrongly judged. So we refine and refine and refine, and trying to say it perfectly enough that no one can twist it or misread it or miss the point. And then for others, perfectionism shows up as a way to avoid contact altogether, right? Because once you create something real, you're in relationship with the world. And for a nervous system that learned connection comes with risk, perfectionism becomes this way to delay that vulnerability. And there can also be a belief that says, if I do this imperfectly, it confirms something painful I already believe about myself. Maybe that I'm not enough, or that I'm behind, or maybe that I'm not legitimate. So perfectionism becomes this self-protection from that deeper wound. And then there's, if I'm visible, I risk connection, and connection risks abandonment. So perfectionism becomes an avoidant attachment strategy disguised as high standards. And the key insight here is this. This pattern is not a character flaw, okay? It is not a personality issue. It's not something wrong with you. It is a nervous system strategy. Your body is trying to keep you safe using the best logic it learned at the time. So I want to share with you what I'm actually doing to heal this, because this isn't theoretical for me, right? This is a very real lived nervous system process. So you can apply this process to whatever pattern you may be working through. So the first thing that I do is I stop arguing with the pattern, right? Instead of asking myself, getting down on myself, why am I like this? Or trying to override it or repress it, right? I start listening to it. I start listening from this place of curiosity without judgment, trying to really just be a witness to it. And I ask myself, what is my system actually afraid will happen if I'm seen? What is the worst case scenario that my body is preparing for? And then what age does this feel like? Or even deeper, what is the earliest age I can remember feeling this? Because the nervous system isn't responding to the present moment. It's responding to memory. So the next thing I do is I name what's happening in real time, okay? And I always do this stuff out loud, and I recommend doing it out loud. Also, using our voice is one of the ways that we actually heal our nervous system and reprogram ourselves. Our voice is like a sound healing instrument. It vibrates, it emits frequencies, and so much of our experiences are suppressed and we quiet ourselves. So I really recommend saying these things out loud. So these are the kinds of things that I'll say as I'm naming what's happening in real time. So maybe I'll say things like, I'm noticing perfectionism right now. I'm noticing the urge to delay, or I'm noticing the urge to try and find excuses to make this not doable right now. And I'm noticing fear around being received. And I'm noticing the part of me that wants connection. And I'm also noticing the part that's terrified of that connection. So that naming is huge because it brings what's happening out of a child loop and into the adult nervous system. And then comes what is the core reprogramming piece for this. So I started separating visibility from relational danger, right? Because that's the problem, is I'm associating this visibility or being received with danger. So we start to separate that, right? For a long time, my body was running this old equation. Visibility equals connection, and connection equals abandonment or betrayal. So I'm actively updating my system as to what is actually true now by teaching it a new equation. And this is simply done through repetition. It is not done through force. So for me, these updates sound like visibility is expression. Connection is optional. Feedback is information. It's not danger. And engagement is not a demand, right? Taking all that pressure off, updating my system as to what's true. And then I work with the right sized exposure, these micro doses on purpose, right? Not flooding with myself, not forcing anything. I'm training my system. So that looks like maybe posting something and not checking it for a set amount of time. Or maybe it looks like letting myself receive one comment and breathing through it. Or reading one message and just checking in with myself and just regulating my body. And I also just want to make a point here to show how these patterns can be so sneaky. Before I became aware of the pattern, I wasn't actually reacting dramatically or spiraling, right, from reading comments or messages. For a long time, I didn't even realize this pattern was present because I thought I was neutral reading these comments or engaging with people, right? But the first sign for me was when I would receive praise. I noticed one day that I wasn't actually able to receive the praise in my body. And I wasn't neutral. I was actually numb. And that numbness lives within the survival response of freeze, right? Our nervous system goes into fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. So numbness is a feeling of the freeze response. It's a subtle form of shutdown. So those microdoses of not checking responses right away or breathing through reading comments or just letting my body feel them and be with the feelings teach the body that we can do this and nothing bad happens. So it helps to unfreeze that numbness. And another huge piece is actively speaking to my nervous system like I'm reparenting it. So I'll say things like, we're safe now. This isn't middle school, right? We're not at the mercy of other people's approval. We don't have to brace. We can be seen and still be held. If someone doesn't like this, we'll be okay. If someone loves this, we'll also be okay. We can receive without performing, and we can be in connection without abandoning ourselves. And the one that really matters for this pattern that I experienced is connection does not automatically mean betrayal anymore. So this next step is to start to set some boundaries, right? So I'll build very clear internal boundaries around engagement because inviting attention doesn't mean inviting everything, right? So I'll consciously remind myself I'm open to engagement that's aligned for me, or I'm open to being met in a way my body can receive, or I'm not available for spiraling or overchecking or outsourcing my worth, right? So practically, that looks like boundaries around maybe when I check stats or how long I read feedback, setting a set amount of time for that and then checking in with my body. Or how I respond, or if I respond, right? Or how quickly I'll post again, or how much I share personally, right? And then I anchor back into my deeper why, which is devotion over validation. I have to remind myself, I'm not looking for validation. This is coming from my own devotion because devotion stabilizes the system. And I remind myself, I'm doing this because it's true. I'm doing this because it's art. I'm doing this because it's service. I'm doing this because it's mine to create, right? Validation is a bonus, okay? It cannot be the foundation. And finally, I complete the cycle in my body. After I publish or share or receive feedback, I slow things down physically. I exhale longer than I inhale. I soften my jaw and my belly. I feel my feet on the ground. These are all somatic exercises that lets our body register nothing bad happened. This is what actually trains safety. So if I leave you with a few simple takeaways from this, perfectionism isn't always about standards, right? Oftentimes it's about safety. If your nervous system learned that connection or being seen leads to pain, it will resist the very thing you consciously want. And healing isn't forcing visibility. It's training capacity to be seen without bracing. And the goal here isn't to be fearless. The goal is to feel safe while you're afraid. So if perfectionism has been your pattern, don't just ask what you need to improve. Ask what your nervous system is trying to prevent and start there. So if you're listening to this and you're thinking, okay, this makes sense, and I can feel how this pattern lives in my body, or how there are other patterns that live in your body, and you're also wondering how to actively deepen this work in a consistent, supported way, I want to invite you into something I've created for exactly this. The Somatic Healing Foundation's membership is where we take everything that I'm talking about here and actually practice it. This isn't about just understanding your patterns intellectually. It's about learning how to work with your nervous system in real time, gently and practically and sustainably. So inside our membership, we have self-paced masterclasses and workshops that break down the nervous system. They teach you how to identify subconscious patterns and attachment dynamics and how to embody, really truly embody the changes you're trying to cultivate in a way that's clear and grounded. And we have a ton of short, doable, somatic exercises you can use in everyday life and when to use them, right? And none of it is overwhelming. It's nothing that requires hours of time. We have stuff that is literally 1 to 3 minutes long. And we have so many tools to help you move through freeze or fear or perfectionism or shutdown and resistance without forcing you into activation. And we have a bunch of practices that support reprogramming these deeper beliefs at the level of the body, not just the mind. And they are all easy and relaxing and so supportive. So it's designed to meet you exactly where you are, whether you have only 5 minutes or even if you have more spacious time, and to help you build real capacity and safety in your system over time. So normally the membership is $44 per month, but as a thank you for listening to the podcast, you can use the code podcast at checkout to get 25% off, which brings it to $33 per month. And you will be locked in at that price as long as you're a member. So that code is podcast in all caps, and I'll have this info written out in the show notes. So if you want to deepen this work, build these skills, and have this ongoing support as you retrain your nervous system and unwind these patterns, I would love to have you inside. So now I want to get into what this episode is really about. As I mentioned earlier, this is the second episode in a series I am currently doing on the core principles of healing. And today I will be talking about the second core principle, which is my soul chose this. And I want to just preface this by making this super clear. This is not a concept that is meant to bypass pain or spiritualize suffering. It's really a framework that helps us make meaning of our experiences without denying how much they hurt, okay? So in this episode, I'm going to walk you through what this principle actually means, why it matters so deeply in the healing journey, and how it can become a source of relief rather than pressure. So as you listen, I invite you to hear this through your own experiences, your own pain, and your own questions. This is the principle of remembering that even in the moments that feel unbearable, there may be a deeper intelligence at work. And I'm going to start off by sharing the story of when I first learned this and how it really pulled me out of a very dark place. So, story time. After I had my second baby, my first daughter, I entered into my first dark night of the soul. And I also had postpartum depression. I had it with my first 3 children, but this time was the most severe. So at the time, I was living in LA. I had zero awareness of healing at this point in my life. I had no language for what was happening to me, no tools, okay? And the only therapy available to me at that time, which absolutely saved my life, was once a week, I would drive to Venice Beach. I would bring my daughter with me in the stroller, and I would walk 3 miles with her from Venice Beach to the Santa Monica Pier and then back. And at this time, I was also living with really bad chronic pain. It took the tiniest little movement sometimes, just turning my head too quickly to trigger a full-on migraine, and as intense as migraines get. So this slow, long walk in the fresh air and sunshine became the best and only medicine available to me at that time. And I remember just being stuck in such a dark, deep hole. And I would be walking with the most beautiful view in front of me, the ocean, the cliffs, the mountains. And I just felt so empty and also so dense. And I remember taking in this view And I would be thinking to myself, the real version of me, the real me would love this view. And I would be so in awe and overwhelmed with gratitude and so full of love that this is where I live and that this walk is available to me. And I only live 15 minutes away from here. This awe-inspiring beauty. And all I could feel was this crushing pain and darkness. And I used to listen to this song over and over while I walked by the artist San Holo, because the words were the perfect description of what I was feeling. It was like this prayer, and the lyrics were, even if it makes me blind, I just want to see the light, right? Even in the bright California sunshine, I was just completely clouded by this dense darkness. So one day, when I was on one of those walks, my husband sends me a text message with a link to a meditation. And he says, my dad just sent me this 10-minute meditation. It's really good, and I think you're going to love it. So this meditation was by Abraham Hicks, and it was the first time I had ever even heard of Abraham Hicks. It was also probably the first time I had ever listened to a meditation, okay, which is wild to think about now as someone who has facilitated hundreds of meditations, if not more than that. Thank you, God, for this healing journey. So anyways, I listened to it, and that meditation was the beginning of my healing. It saved me, and it pulled me out of the darkness during that time. I would listen to it every day, sometimes multiple times a day. And the whole meditation was about the concept of our soul choosing this life before we're born. And that even in the pain, our soul is actually rejoicing because it is living its purpose, doing exactly what it came here to do. So this meditation really resonated so deeply for me because it's a concept in Judaism that I had heard before. And at this point, I hadn't learned the concept in depth yet, but I knew the basic idea that our soul has a particular tikkun, which is also known as a rectification, to fulfill in this life. So a little background on that. In Jewish and Kabbalistic wisdom, the soul doesn't come into this life blindly. Before we're born, the soul has an awareness of what it's here to work through, to grow and to bring into the world. It knows its particular mission, its tikkun, and then it enters life through a family and a lineage that can actually activate that work. So family is not random in this view. The family that we're born into is so intentional from our soul because it's the relational environment where the soul's unfinished patterns, gifts, and lessons naturally get stirred up and brought to the surface. So from this lens, families are living systems of healing across generations. Souls come into the exact family where something can finally move or shift or be completed, sometimes for themselves and sometimes for the lineage as a whole, oftentimes for both of those reasons. And parents and children end up shaping and refining each other, often in ways neither consciously chose, right? The soul's descent into life is understood as a purposeful act, a willingness to step into embodied relational reality so that healing and growth and the revelation of something new can unfold through real lived experience. So from this perspective, this pain, this heartbreak, this dark night of the soul I'm experiencing is the best chance that the soul has at accomplishing its tikkun. So in essence, I chose this. We choose it all. And when we say my soul chose this, what we really mean is this life contains the exact conditions my soul needs in order to become more whole. Now here's the catch. Once we're born into a body, we completely forget our soul. We forget our purpose, and we enter the human journey. And this forgetting is actually where our free will comes in, because if we remembered our purpose clearly, if we knew our tikkun from the start, life would be very easy to navigate, right? But it would also remove the very conditions that make transformation possible. Tikkun can only happen in a state of unknowing. If we arrived already aware of the repair we're here to make, there would be nothing to discover and nothing to reveal. And that's where contrast comes in. We would never be able to achieve our tikkun if we knew it in advance, because without contrast, the experience would remain flat and unfelt and unrecognized. And I'm going to dive deeper into this idea of contrast in another episode, but for now, here's what I mean. Certain things can't be understood intellectually. They can only be known through their opposite. Right? Abundance is recognizable because lack exists, or warmth only registers because we've known cold, right? My rabbi in LA, Rabbi Zions, once said in a talk, the only way to truly know something is to know its opposite. And that's what I mean here. How could I experience real embodied gratitude, which is one of the highest emotional states, if I had never known the absence of what I'm grateful for, right? Without contrast, gratitude would just stay conceptual. With contrast, it becomes lived. And another core belief in Judaism is this deep emphasis on gratitude. It's easy to see a beautiful sunset and be overcome with gratitude, right? To get lost in the spirituality of how great God is. To say, look at this beautiful world you created. I'm so blessed to witness this beauty in this place and this time. But can we say that when we're going through pain? Can we thank God in those moments? Can we thank God for the actual pain or heartbreak or whatever it is while we're actually going through it? Right? Like that viral song, thank you for sunshine, thank you for rain, thank you for joy, thank you for pain. Right? Can we honestly thank God for our pain? Usually not until the process is complete. Most of the time, it's only in hindsight, once we've learned the purpose of it all, can we then look back and feel that gratitude. So when I listened to this meditation, I was reminded of this truth. But this was the first time I was hearing this concept that actually, in this very moment, when all I can feel is deep, dense darkness and pain, my soul is happy because I am exactly where I am supposed to be. And maybe, just maybe, I could tap into that well of joy my soul is feeling within me, beneath the density, and let it begin to guide me through the darkness. And also this concept that my soul is happy and that I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be is what also allowed me to accept my circumstances. I couldn't accept them before. Before I was just in the victim mode of why me? Why is this happening? How is this happening? This is my life? Like what? And now I was able to accept it. And so I once saw this meme talking about the dark night of the soul. And by the way, I know I've mentioned the dark night of the soul a few times. So if you're unfamiliar with this term, the dark night of the soul is a time period of deep inner disorientation and loss of meaning where familiar sources of identity and comfort and faith kind of fall away in order to plunge us into a healing journey so that a truer, more integrated self can emerge. So this meme that I saw said, it wasn't a dark night of the soul. It was a dark night for your ego and obsolete identities. To your soul, it was one of the brightest nights, one where its light was finally able to break through the thick layers of your limiting conditioning and blast your heart open. So another gift that this newfound belief gave me about my soul choosing this is that it gave me an enormous amount of relief from the guilt I was carrying as a mother at that time. The guilt that I had that my babies had to have this depressed, sad, sick mother, and that they had to watch me suffering in physical and emotional pain, right? This reframe was allowed to come in that they chose me. They chose me because even with all my flaws, I am the perfect mother for them in order for them to fulfill their tikkun. And I can trust that. I can choose to trust that. And I know that I will do the best that I can with what I have. And they're going to be all right. Even though it's messy, even though it's not pretty, I know that at least I can model for them what it looks like to be committed to trudging through the mud to get to the light and levity at the end of the tunnel. and they'll be able to do the same with whatever challenges come their way. So they will be okay. And I know that what I just said can be confronting because it doesn't mean our parents did everything right? It just means something deeper was at work alongside the mess. And we get to choose to trust that. So during this time in my life, I remember one night being in the middle of one of my migraines. If you're new to me and my story, I used to suffer from a chronic vestibular migraine condition. And this was actually around the time when they went from being an occasional thing to a persistent chronic condition. That I was getting them every single week, and they would last for days. So in the depth of suffering, this severe chronic pain, I was in my bedroom. I remember someone coming to check on me, and I couldn't even open my eyes. I could barely breathe. I remember just the sound of the creak of the door opening made me vomit. I couldn't even hold down a sip of water. And in that moment, I had this moment of clarity for the first time. And I said to God, I have no idea why you want me to experience this kind of pain, but I have a hunch that for some reason, you want me to understand the pain of others. And I am choosing to trust that one day you will reveal that reason to me. Side note, it's so crazy to think about that moment now after my whole healing journey and becoming a healer and a guide as a result of that journey. I've been living in this purpose for some years now. So wow, thank you, God. So this moment of clarity, this belief, this knowing is truly what kept me going through this time. It's what gave me the trust that there was a purpose here. Because if we don't have this belief, then what is it all even for? That moment in my bedroom was the first time I stopped fighting the pain and started trusting there was meaning inside it. A few years ago, when I was interviewed by Ellie Nash on his podcast, In Search of More, he said something that captured this so perfectly. He said, I'm not sure there would be much justification for a compassionate God if there wasn't a purpose for all of this pain. And he worded that so perfectly, so accurately. So becoming secure in this knowing, choosing to become secure in this knowing, right? Because it's a choice that we make. So becoming secure in this knowing, in this belief, allows us to let go of so much resentment and of bracing, and to let go of the questions of why, God, are you doing this to me? Why are you making me suffer so much? Oh, because actually I chose this for a much greater purpose, and I can choose to trust that and heed that call. And my soul, my true essence, the realest, deepest, most authentic part of me is rejoicing because I am exactly where I need to be right now. And I want to be really clear about something. Even with this belief so embedded into me, even after so much healing, life keeps lifing, right? Post-healing journey, new incredibly difficult circumstances have popped up into my life, new traumas, new awarenesses of old traumas that I was previously unaware of. Again and again, I've been met with new mountains of healing to go through, right? And it's actually not necessarily right to just be like, it's fine because I chose this. I'm happy about this. That's not right, And let me tell you, I was not happy about all the new things that came up, right? It brought up a ton of resentment that this is my life, that this is what I have to deal with. And that first way of thinking, of jumping straight to, it's fine, my soul chose this, that is bypassing. That is not how this goes. What is required first is acknowledging the emotions of how much it sucks, okay? Letting the sensations of those emotions that we are feeling flow through the body because they're there. We cannot fight them. We cannot repress them. We cannot bypass them with grand spiritual concepts. If they are there, they are right, and they are there to be felt. This is a yes and moment. Yes, this sucks. So let me process how much I effing hate this. Let me feel and express the resentment and the anger and the grief so that I can then let it go and get to the and in this yes and moment. Yes, this sucks. And my soul chose this. I'm not rejoicing. I'm pissed. And my soul is rejoicing because my soul knows the gorgeous purpose this process will eventually bring me to. Even though I haven't crossed the threshold to gratitude and joy yet, I know my soul is rejoicing because she knows what's on the other side of all of this. Remember that meaning comes after metabolization, not instead of it. I'm going to say that one more time. Meaning comes after metabolization, not instead of it. Now, a big blockage that tends to come up around this belief of my soul chose this is the fear of the unknown. And truly, this entire healing journey is an epic and holy quest into the unknown. Because the question that tends to come up are, who am I without my pain? Or who am I without my ego, which has served me as a valiant protector? Will I lose myself completely? Right? And there are parts of myself that I do love, parts that I don't want to change, parts that have kept me safe. And I don't know what's waiting for me in the unknown. And here's the spoiler alert for what happens when you allow yourself to embrace the unknown and become this new healed version of yourself. There's actually nothing new about the person you're becoming. The person you are becoming has been there all along, imprisoned beneath all of the shit that was piled on top of you throughout your life. The shit that is not yours, that is not you. Those are parts of your personality that were developed out of the need for survival and protection from pain. And you may love the strength you acquired through that, but that version of strength doesn't serve you anymore. And the beautiful thing is that the strength and wisdom that you learned along the way will never leave you. You don't have to fear that. It actually just becomes transmuted. It becomes felt, still very much there, just in a softer, more regulated way. In a way that maybe you can't even imagine yet. You get to become you. You get to become your soul fully embodied, your essence fully expressed, the truest, most authentic version of yourself, without fear of judgment, so secure in your own being, comfortable in your own being. You don't lose the parts of you that are real, only the parts that were built out of fear. So allow yourself to embrace the unknown. So I don't know if you have ever seen the Disney movie Frozen 2. Spoiler alert if you haven't. That movie is incredibly esoteric, and it is a myth about healing and all about this concept of embracing the unknown. When it first came out, I had no idea what the heck was going on in that movie. But now, after going through this healing journey and understanding how that works, when I watch that movie with my kids, I sob because of how profound it is. So I'm going to break down all the symbolism for you in that movie. Welcome to my brain where I process Disney movies and Torah-style commentary. Okay, so here we go. And stay with me. This is good stuff, I promise. So from the very beginning of this movie, Queen Elsa, main character, she hears this voice calling out to her from a distance, and only she can hear it. And at first she's like, no, leave me alone. I'm comfortable. I'm not trying to mess up all the safety and security I've managed to build for myself in the first movie, okay? Life is good enough. Shut up already. But the voice keeps calling her, and she can't shake it. There's something about it that just feels so familiar to her, and she knows that she just has to follow it. So she ends up going through this whole inner battle in this song called Into the Unknown, okay? Where she's like, I hear you, but I'm good, so leave me alone, but I hear you, so what happens if I follow you, right? And then she goes for it. And then everything around her starts to fall apart and collapse, right? All the safety, all the security, gone. The whole kingdom is falling apart. And it's like the caterpillar going into a cocoon, right? Thinking, okay, cool, I'm becoming a butterfly. And then he goes into this warm, safe cocoon. And then what happens? Boom. Everything starts to break down. The structure he's known dissolves. He literally turns to goo. Okay. And if he could think, he would be like, excuse me, I signed up to become a butterfly. What is this? Okay. But that's the part that no one talks about because the caterpillar isn't confused about the destination. He's confused by the process. And that's the healing journey. It's not about doubting where you're headed. It's about staying present when the familiar structure falls away, when nothing looks like what you expected it, and trusting this process that is totally unknown, this process of reorganization happening underneath, is what allows your true form to emerge. So back to Frozen 2. Elsa goes on this whole epic, wild journey. She's fighting and battling the elements as in fire, earth, water, and air. And if you're like, what the heck are you talking about? It doesn't matter. Just stay with me and focus on the point I'm making here. You can watch the movie later, okay? So she has these epic battles with one element at a time. So for example, the element of fire is just creating fires all over the place. It's trying to kill her and destroy everything. And she's battling it, and then eventually she defeats it. And then when she defeats it, it turns out that the fire element is actually this cute, sweet, cuddly little creature, which only reveals itself to be that way once she defeats it. And then it's there as her like little buddy, there to support her and help her with the rest of her journey. So all of this imagery is such a clear metaphor for inner child healing. So in the inner child healing process, more often than not, when we first meet our inner child, she or he is angry or sad or confused, or maybe they feel abandoned, right? They're sitting with whatever all those emotions are that they never got to express, or maybe they expressed but were never validated, right? They're literally frozen in time, pun intended. And healing the inner child can sometimes feel like a battle, the same way Elsa battled with the elements. I know many people who did this work can relate. But once we complete that healing process for each part of our inner child, he or she becomes freed from this pain. She becomes sweet and calm and peaceful and supportive of us. Right? There are times, many times, that I healed a part of my inner child, and then she became this like wise guide. When I would ask her what she needs, she would start telling me how to properly mother my children or how to take care of myself. And she was suddenly there like this wise, sweet little girl supporting me in my continued healing. So this whole scene of Elsa defeating the raging elements and then transmuting them into their free, loving, supportive selves is the equivalent of us transmuting our pains and darknesses into light. And Kabbalah actually explains this process. So in Kabbalah, healing is understood as birur, which is the process of gently uncovering and releasing divine light that has been trapped inside pain. So when an experience is too overwhelming, the soul wraps the light within it in protective layers so that we can survive. And those layers later show up as fear or shutdown or anger or symptoms, to name a few examples. So healing doesn't mean eliminating these parts. It means meeting them with enough safety and awareness that the protection can then soften and the divine sparks inside are revealed and freed. So when this happens, the very place that once felt dark becomes a source of strength, vitality, and inner support. So back to Frozen 2, because this is the moment everything comes together, okay? So Elsa finally reaches the place she's been traveling toward, the source of the voice she's been hearing the entire time. And what's striking is that she's been following this voice not because she understands it, but because it just feels deeply familiar, like something she already knows. So when she arrives, she realizes this place that she's arriving to actually mirrors her. It's cold, it's frozen, it's been holding secrets just like her. And this is when she starts singing the song called Show Yourself to the voice that's been calling her. So this is the moment of her arrival, and I want to read these lyrics to you, okay? So pay attention. She sings, "Every inch of me is trembling, but not from the cold. Something is familiar, like a dream I can reach but cannot quite hold. I can sense you there, like a friend I've always known. I'm arriving and it feels like I am home. I have always been a fortress, cold secrets deep inside. You have secrets too, but you don't have to hide." Okay, so this is the part of our healing when we start to get to know ourselves, when we start to sense our essence. this is the voice that's been calling her. She's so close now, okay? So she continues singing, show yourself. I'm dying to meet you. Show yourself. It's your turn. Are you the one I've been looking for all of my life? Show yourself. I'm ready to learn. So this is the moment in healing where we start to remember who we are, right? Not by becoming someone new, but by clearing away everything that buried our authenticity, the adaptations, the pressures, the hard moments that taught us to quiet parts of ourselves. And as we heal, we begin to sense that inner voice again, the one that's always been there, and slowly remember. So she continues singing, I've never felt so certain. All my life I've been torn, but I'm here for a reason. Could it be the reason I was born? Okay, so this is the moment in the healing journey when purpose starts to reveal itself, not as something you figure out, but as this subtle inner knowing that your life has meaning and that there is a reason you're here. There is a reason for all of this, okay? So then she sings, I have always been so different. Normal rules did not apply. Is this the day? Are you the way? I finally find out why. Okay, so now this is the moment many people reach on their healing journey. When you stop pathologizing your differences and you start sensing that they actually mean something. What once felt like, why don't I fit, begins to shift into, maybe this is exactly who I'm meant to be. Okay? And then she sings, show yourself. I'm no longer trembling. Here I am. I've come so far. You are the answer I've waited for all of my life. Show yourself. Let me see who you are. Okay, so she's ready now. She's moved through the uncertainty. She's built enough inner safety to actually receive the truth. And then something important happens. Her mother appears, okay? The soul of her mother. Her mother's not alive. So her mother appears not as someone rescuing her, but as a guide, reminding her of what she already carries. And this is also such a part of the healing journey. As we heal, we begin to feel support, spiritual, ancestral, intuitive support, meeting us as we step into ourselves. Okay, so then her mother sings to her, show yourself, step into your power, grow yourself into something new. You are the one you've been waiting for, okay? It was her all along. She goes on this epic quest, this healing journey to follow this voice. And where does she arrive? Back home to her true self, okay? And then her appearance totally changes. She gets this new hairdo and this new outfit just like blooms out of her, and her energy changes, and she steps fully into her own authentic expression. Not because she became someone else, but because she finally stopped hiding who she was. She's in her full power now, and it was her all along. Okay, so another point I want to make here and take from this story is, as I've said before, we are each our own healer. The healers and guides you work with are supporting you. They're guiding you. They're showing you the way. But it is you doing the work, and it has been you all along, right? Only you can free yourself from your pain. No one else can do that for you. Only you can transmute that darkness that is within. Only you can cultivate forgiveness. Only you can cultivate self-love and worthiness, right? No one else can do these things for you. That can only come from within. And this is the piece that makes the whole story land. It's very rare that we just wake up one day and decide to embark on a healing journey, right? It's a courageous act that takes a lot of strength. And in most cases, it starts because something inside of us starts calling, right? That voice Elsa hears, that's our inner essence, our true self, our soul. It's the part of us that remembers who we are beneath the pain. And it's calling us back home to ourselves. And that calling can show up in so many different ways, right? For some people, it shows up as physical symptoms. For others, it's anxiety or depression or chronic illness or burnout or relationship patterns, grief, loss, on, right? Sometimes it shows up as dissatisfaction or a quiet emptiness or even a very loud emptiness or a feeling that something just isn't right. And sometimes it's actually a literal voice, like a divine download of a very clear message of something that needs to happen, a change that we need to make, a journey we need to embark on. I know tons of people that have experienced that, including myself. And for many of us, that calling does not come just once. I know for me, I've experienced multiple callings like this throughout my life, and I continue to. And each one is an invitation, and each one is a threshold. And every time we answer that call, even when we resist it, even when we're terrified of it, we're stepping deeper into alignment with our soul. So when we say, my soul chose this, it's not just about the pain we've experienced. It's especially about the fact that our soul keeps calling us forward, keeps nudging us toward healing, keeps asking us to remember who we really are. And even when everything in us wants to stay comfortable and stay small and stay protected, that voice does not go away because it is us calling ourselves home. And that is what healing really is. It is not becoming someone new. It's remembering who we have always been. And I would like to close this episode speaking to this concept of the fear of the unknown by sharing my all-time favorite quote in the whole world, which is by Dr. Joe Dispenza. And he says, "One thing I know for sure is the unknown has never let me down." Before we get into today's takeaways, let me ask you something. Have you ever felt like you're growing but without a clear rhythm? Like you're doing the inner work but you're not sure what this season is actually asking of you? Because growth is not random. According to the Hebrew calendar, every month carries a specific spiritual energy, a refinement, a body part, an emotional gateway, an invitation. And when you align with that rhythm, you stop forcing your growth and you start moving with it. That's why I created the expanded spring edition of the Kabbalah Moon Journal. This is not just a journal, it's a guided monthly framework that teaches you how to live in sync with sacred time, and more importantly, how to default to your body's wisdom instead of your anxiety, conditioning, or just the noise around you. Each month gives you the focus, the structure, the embodied practices that help you integrate it. If you loved the winter edition, the spring edition goes so much deeper. Expanded teachings, somatic embodiment exercises, and more guidance to help you actually live what you're learning. If you are ready to grow intentionally instead of reactively, the expanded spring edition of the Kabbalah Moon Journal is available now on Amazon. Okay, let's get into today's takeaways. 1, even when a moment feels unbearable, there is a deeper intelligence at work beneath it. 2, in our darkest pain, our soul is not panicking, it is rejoicing. It knows we are stepping directly into what we came here to live and fulfill. 3, we are born into the exact family and life that will activate our soul's mission, including the painful imprints that shape our becoming. 4, the only way to truly know something is to know its opposite. So the only way to truly know light is to encounter darkness, and the only way to know strength is to meet resistance. 5, trusting that our pain holds purpose is a choice, and when we choose trust, the weight of the pain shifts. 6, believing our soul chose the hard chapters does not excuse bypassing them. 7, pain must be acknowledged, felt, and expressed before it can be integrated into faith and trust that my soul chose this. 8, meaning comes after metabolization, not instead of it. 9, the new version of you that emerges through healing is not new at all. She is the most original, truest version of you, the one you are remembering your way back to. 10, if you haven't watched Frozen 2, go watch it. 11, The healing journey is not about obsessing over where you're headed. It's about staying present when the familiar falls away and trusting yourself in the unknown. 12. You are your own healer. You can be guided, you can be supported, but you are the one who does the work. 13. Your soul is always calling you forward, never backward. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. Truly, the fact that you are here choosing growth, depth, and intentional living, it matters. And I don't take that lightly. If this episode resonated with you, the most powerful way you can support this podcast is by subscribing and leaving a rating and review. Those reviews aren't just encouraging, they directly impact how the podcast is ranked and who gets shown these conversations. Every review helps more women find this work, and that ripple effect is real. If something in today's episode spoke to you, take a screenshot of you listening, share it to your Instagram stories, and tag us at manifest.health.official. I love seeing where you're tuning in from, what's landing for you, and what conversations you want more of. You can also follow along on Instagram for deeper teachings, embodiment practices, and updates on everything we're building. And if you feel called, send me a message. Tell me what shifted for you. Tell me what you're working through. This is not a one-way conversation. We are building something here, a community of women committed to living in rhythm, in truth, and in their bodies. I am so grateful you are a part of it. I'll see you in the next episode. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for choosing depth, for choosing growth, for choosing to live awake and embodied in your own life. I'm Tamar, a wife, a mother of 5 beautiful children, and a woman deeply devoted to living in alignment with God, Hashem. I spend my days homeschooling, creating, tending to my home and family, and building work that helps women come back into their bodies and their truth. I'm a somatic energy practitioner and teacher. My work weaves together nervous system science, somatic healing, quantum principles, Kabbalah, and Torah-rooted, God-centered wisdom. I'm the founder of Manifest Health, creator of the Somatic Healing Foundation's membership, the Kabbalah Moon Journal, and the Lagani Method, a body-based healing framework that integrates breath, movement, sound, touch, and embodied awareness to restore alignment and inner strength. If you'd like to go deeper, you can connect with me on Instagram at manifest.health.official or join us inside the membership at naz.io/manifesthealth.